She objected to the marriage, but the alien princess stood frozen upon seeing the human. The sky glowed in shades of pink and orange, painting a picture that even the most skilled artist could not capture. But Leora did not feel calm. She felt trapped. Every day she felt the weight of her title pressing down on her, heavier than the golden chains of any ordinary prison. The Sci-Fi Empire was vast, stretching across hundreds of planets. Its people were proud, disciplined, and guided by tradition that stretched back thousands of years. Leora had been raised to follow the rules, obey the council, and serve her people. Yet, as much as she loved her home, she hated the thought of her future. The council had decided, without consulting her, that she must marry a political ally. This was not a man she loved. He was a tool, a symbol of alliance between the Sci-Fi Empire and another star system. Marriages for power, marriages for peace, marriages for duty. None of them allowed for choice, and none of them allowed for love. Leora had objected, many times. She had told the council that she would not marry a stranger for the sake of politics. She had spoken with fire in her voice, arguing that her personal freedom was just as important as the peace of the empire. But the council had only raised their brows and reminded her of the weight of her position. A princess must sacrifice personal desires for the greater good, they said. Your duty is above all else. Duty. That word made Leora ache. She had tried to understand it, to accept it, but every time she looked at the bright sky, she felt that duty was something someone else had written for her, a story she had not chosen. Her thoughts were interrupted by the soft chime of the palace doors. A messenger entered, bowing low. "Princess Leora," he said, his voice steady but nervous. "The envoy has arrived. The human who will be your intended is here." Leora froze, a human from Earth. She had read about humans in her history lessons. They were different from all the alien species she had met. They were unpredictable, curious, and remarkably bold. Some called them reckless, others called them heroes. But no matter the description, one thing was certain: humans were unknown, and she was wary of the unknown. "Send him to the Great Hall," Leora said after a moment, her voice calm but firm. Her heart, however, beat faster than it had in weeks. The Great Hall was a vast space, with high ceilings that shimmered like liquid silver. Tall windows framed the glowing skies outside. Statues of past rulers stood silently in the corners, their eyes seeming to watch over every visitor, judging their intentions. Leora stepped forward as the doors opened. The human entered. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a confident stance. His hair was dark and slightly tousled, and his eyes, deep brown and strangely gentle, scanned the room with curiosity, not fear. He did not bow excessively, but he did not appear arrogant. He simply stood, waiting for Leora to acknowledge him. For a moment, Leora could not speak. She had imagined a human in many ways, fierce, bold, perhaps even aggressive. But this human, he radiated calm, confidence without arrogance, strength without threat. Something in his presence made her chest tighten, and she found herself unable to look away. The council cleared their throats. "Princess Leora," one elder said, "this is Captain Elias, representing the human alliance. He comes as part of the agreement for peace between our systems. His presence here marks the first step in fulfilling the treaty." Elias inclined his head slightly. "Princess Leora," he said, his voice even and polite, "it is an honor to meet you. I hope we can work together for the good of both our peoples." Leora swallowed hard. His words were simple, yet sincere. She felt her usual defiance stir, but it was mixed with curiosity. Who was this human? What made him so different? "I see," Leora replied finally, her voice steady. She wanted to hide her surprise, to return to the defiance she was known for. But she found herself studying him instead. The way he observed the hall, the statues, the paintings, and even the faint scent of the palace air. It was as if he were learning, not judging. The council whispered among themselves, clearly pleased with the human's behavior. They had expected him to falter, to hesitate under the gaze of royalty or to show fear. But Elias remained composed, his eyes never leaving Leora's for more than a moment. "Captain Elias," Leora said, stepping closer, her curiosity growing, "I hope you understand that marriage in our empire is not trivial. It is a bond that carries weight, duty, and responsibility. You must know what you are agreeing to." Elias nodded. "I am aware, Princess. But I also believe that people can shape their bonds with trust and respect. Duty alone does not build a strong alliance. Understanding and cooperation do." Her eyebrows rose. That was an unusual response. Most envoys would have offered empty flattery or pledges to follow the empire's rules. Elias spoke with honesty, and honesty could be dangerous in the presence of the council. Leora felt a mix of admiration and unease. Could she trust him? Should she even trust him? Yet deep inside, a small voice whispered that perhaps this human was not a threat. Perhaps he was someone who could understand her world, even if he came from one so far away. The council clapped their hands, breaking her reverie. "You will spend time together, Princess," the elder said. "You will learn about one another. The treaty requires understanding. Remember, Captain Elias represents not only himself but an entire species. Treat this with respect." Leora inclined her head, though her mind was spinning. Time together, learning about one another. That was a phrase she had never imagined being applied to her life. She had expected commands, orders, and rituals. Instead, she was being asked to engage, to interact, to possibly understand a human. Over the next hours, Leora watched Elias navigate the palace. He asked questions about her culture, the customs of her people, and even about her personal experiences. He did not press, did not interrogate, but simply observed and listened. It was unlike anything Leora had experienced. Most visitors would only glance at the surface, taking the palace's grandeur as enough. Elias wanted depth. She felt a strange connection growing, one she could not name. It was not love, not yet. It was curiosity, admiration. A spark of recognition that humans had something unique, something that no alien she had met possessed. Resilience, creativity, and an innate sense of morality that seemed pure. As the sun set completely, casting long shadows across the palace halls, Leora found herself walking beside Elias in the garden. Flowers of violet and silver glowed softly under bioluminescent vines. The air smelled faintly sweet, mixed with the clean scent of the nearby mountains. "Princess," Elias said, his voice soft in the quiet, "your people have built something incredible here. This palace, the gardens, your traditions, they speak of dedication, care, and respect for history. I hope to learn as much as I can while I am here." Leora smiled faintly. "You speak with more respect than most of my own council. You surprise me." He chuckled lightly. "Perhaps it is the human way. We learn quickly when we see greatness. We do not take it lightly." Leora's heart felt lighter, even as fear lingered. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, what the council would demand, or whether she would ever feel free to choose her own path. But for the first time in years, she felt intrigued. And as she watched the stars appear one by one in the deep sky above Scifi, she wondered if perhaps the human standing beside her could be the key not only to the future of the empire, but also to her own freedom. She did not yet know if she could trust him. She did not yet know if she could follow her own heart. But she did know one thing: something had changed, and the wheels of destiny, once set in motion by duty alone, had begun to turn towards something unexpected. The palace gates were silent in the night, yet Leora felt the presence of destiny as surely as she felt the cool night air on her face. The human before her was no ordinary visitor. He was something entirely new, a force that could challenge tradition, defy expectation, and awaken a part of her she had long forgotten. And as she turned back to the palace, Leora knew that the days ahead would test everything she believed. But she also knew that for the first time in her life, she was ready to meet that challenge, not as a princess bound by duty, but as a human being capable of choice. The morning sun rose over the Sci-Fi capital, casting long golden beams across the silver rooftops and crystal towers. The city shimmered in the light, its streets bustling with merchants, diplomats, and citizens beginning their daily routines. Yet in the palace, a quiet tension hung in the air. Princess Leora paced her chambers, her thoughts heavy. The events of the previous night lingered in her mind. Captain Elias, the human, had impressed her, surprised her, even unsettled her in ways she could not explain. His calm confidence and genuine curiosity had left a mark. Leora had been ready to dismiss him as just another political tool, another stranger sent to control her future. But something about him defied that expectation. She stopped in front of the large mirror that framed one side of her room. Her reflection looked tense, her brows slightly furrowed. "I must not be fooled," she whispered to herself. "He is still a human. He may seem admirable, but he is not here for me. He is here for the treaty." A knock on the door broke her thoughts. "Enter," she said, her voice firm. The door opened, and a palace attendant stepped in, bowing slightly. "Princess, Captain Elias requests a meeting in the observation hall. He wishes to discuss the plans for the upcoming cultural exchange. He also wishes to know more about you." Leora stiffened. He wanted to know more about her. This was unexpected. Few visitors had ever shown genuine interest in her personal thoughts beyond the obligations of diplomacy. Still, curiosity outweighed caution. She nodded. "Very well, I will meet him there." The observation hall was one of Leora's favorite places in the palace. Tall windows offered a panoramic view of the city, and the room was filled with maps, models of planets, and artifacts from across the empire. It was a place for learning, planning, and seeing beyond the walls of the palace. Captain Elias was already there, standing near a model of the Sci-Fi solar system. He looked up as Leora entered and smiled warmly. His presence was calm, yet it carried a quiet strength that seemed to fill the room. "Princess Leora," he said, bowing slightly, "thank you for meeting with me. I hope the morning finds you well." Leora nodded, taking a measured step forward. "I am well." "And you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I am well," Elias replied, "though I admit I am still learning much about your people. Every day is a new discovery." She raised an eyebrow. "And what have you discovered so far?" Elias paused, considering his words carefully. "That the Sci-Fi people value tradition, honor, and careful planning. That your culture respects history and knowledge. And that you, princess, have a mind that questions even the rules set before you." Leora's heart skipped a beat. He had noticed her defiance, not just her title, but her thoughts, her feelings, her refusal to blindly obey. Most humans would have been overwhelmed or intimidated. Elias observed her without judgment, seeing the real person beneath the crown. "And what do you think of that?" she asked softly, stepping closer. "I think it is remarkable," he said. "To question rules does not mean to disrespect them. It shows strength, courage, and vision. Qualities rare even among humans and even rarer among those bound by strict tradition." Leora felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She had expected diplomacy, flattery, perhaps even manipulation. Instead, she had honesty, and honesty was powerful. "I must warn you," she said carefully, "that I do not intend to follow this arranged marriage without thought. I will not be bound by tradition alone." Elias nodded. "I would not expect you to, and you should not. A bond, whether political or personal, should be built on understanding, respect, and choice, not just obligation." Her eyes widened slightly. He spoke of choice as if it were natural, as if it were possible in her world. Most of the council's words had always reminded her that she had no choice. Yet Elias treated it as something achievable. They spent the next hours walking through the observation hall, examining models of planets and distant systems. Elias asked questions, not only about political alliances but also about the culture, art, and daily life of the Sci-Fi people. Leora answered cautiously at first, testing him. Yet his reactions were genuine, full of curiosity rather than judgment. When she described the festivals of Sci-Fi, the music that filled the streets and the stories of heroes past, he listened intently. He asked questions that showed he truly wanted to understand. "And these stories," he said, "do they inspire your people to be brave? To act with honor?" "They do," Leora replied, "but they also remind us of the consequences of failure. Honor is demanded, not optional." Elias smiled. "Perhaps that is why your people are so strong, but strength also needs guidance. Courage alone is not enough. Wisdom is needed too. I see both in your people, princess, and in you." Her cheeks warmed at the compliment, but she kept her composure. He was careful not to flatter or manipulate. That honesty, that respect, made her want to continue the conversation. Later, they moved to the palace gardens, where the soft wind carried the scent of exotic flowers. The garden was quiet, a rare moment away from the bustle of the palace. Leora walked beside Elias, observing how he interacted with the environment. He marveled at the plants, touched the petals gently, and asked questions about their origins and uses. "Your people have created something beautiful here," Elias said, pausing to look at her. "It is more than a garden. It is a statement of care, of knowledge, of legacy." "You notice details most overlook," Leora replied. "Most visitors see the garden as decoration. Few understand it as a symbol." He shrugged. "Perhaps it is because humans are trained to notice, to adapt, but I also think it is because I care to understand." She looked at him, studying his face. There was sincerity there, an openness that disarmed her. She felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. For the first time she felt that someone, not an advisor, not a diplomat, but someone, saw her world through her eyes. They paused by a fountain, the water catching the sunlight like scattered jewels. Leora spoke quietly, almost to herself. "I do not want to be a prisoner of duty. I do not want my life dictated by tradition alone." Elias turned to her, his gaze steady. "You do not have to be. You are strong and you think for yourself. Those are gifts, princess. Gifts that can shape your destiny, not just follow it." She looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of the fountain. "And what of you, human? What would you do if placed in my position? Would you follow rules blindly?" "I would not," he said firmly. "I would find a way to honor the past while creating a future that is just and fair. That is what humans do. We strive, we challenge, and we grow. Perhaps we are reckless sometimes, but we are never without hope." Leora felt a shiver run through her. His words carried conviction, a belief in something greater than power or duty. It was inspiring. And for the first time, she wondered if perhaps humans were more than stories in history books. Perhaps they were exactly what her world needed: unexpected courage, resilience, and the ability to see beyond what was imposed. As the day continued, Leora found herself laughing at Elias' curious questions about Sci-Fi customs. He had a playful way of observing rules, noticing small contradictions, and asking why things were done a certain way. His curiosity was endless, and it was refreshing to speak with someone who did not accept tradition blindly, but respected it enough to ask questions. By evening, the palace announced a formal dinner, where the council and diplomats from other systems would attend. Leora and Elias walked back toward the palace halls, the sun setting behind the mountains. Golden light bathed the city, reflecting off crystal towers and casting long shadows across the gardens. As they approached the grand doors, Leora stopped and looked at Elias. "You are unlike anyone I have met," she said softly. "And you, princess, are unlike anyone I expected to meet," he replied with a gentle smile. "Perhaps that is why we will learn much from each other." For the first time in her life, Leora felt a spark of hope. Not for freedom alone, but for understanding, partnership, and the possibility of shaping her own destiny. She did not yet know where this path would lead, or if she could trust the human standing beside her. But she felt that change was beginning, and that the story of her life and of the empire was about to take a turn unlike anything she had imagined. As the palace doors closed behind them, Leora realized that she no longer feared the unknown entirely. She was willing to explore it, to challenge it, and perhaps even to embrace it. And in doing so, she discovered a truth that had long been hidden. That courage was not only about defying duty, but also about opening one's heart to what was unfamiliar, extraordinary, and real. The morning sun had barely touched the spires of the Sci-Fi palace when Princess Leora awoke to the sound of distant bells ringing through the city. Today was not like the others. Today, Captain Elias would accompany her on her first journey outside the palace walls to witness the cultural festival that had been celebrated for generations. The event would include music, dances, rituals, and games, all designed to honor the history and bravery of the Sci-Fi people. Leora dressed carefully, choosing garments that reflected the honor of her position, yet allowed freedom of movement. As she adjusted the folds of her tunic, she caught her reflection in the mirror. The past few days had left her unsettled but intrigued. The human Elias was no ordinary visitor. He had a way of seeing the world that was both thoughtful and alive, noticing details that others overlooked. When she arrived in the courtyard, Elias was already waiting. He stood beside a hovering guide droid, observing the courtyard with interest. His expression brightened when he saw her. "Princess Leora," he said warmly, bowing slightly, "today promises to be remarkable. I am eager to learn from your people." She raised an eyebrow, masking her own curiosity. "And are you ready for customs, rituals, and crowds?" she asked. "I am ready," he replied without hesitation, "and I hope to learn not only from your people but from you as well." The first stop was the Temple of Echoes, where the festival began with a ceremonial ritual honoring past heroes of the Empire. Leora led Elias through tall archways, their walls engraved with stories of warriors, diplomats, and thinkers whose actions had shaped Sci-Fi history. "The heroes of our past set the standard for courage," Leora explained as they walked. "We honor them to remind ourselves that strength and wisdom are inseparable. Every citizen learns these lessons from birth." Elias listened intently, his eyes scanning the engraved images. "Humans also honor our heroes," he said thoughtfully. "But sometimes we forget the lessons behind the stories. I hope to remember them better here." Leora was surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Most visitors would nod politely, offering words of admiration and then moving on. Elias asked questions. He wanted to understand the why, not just the what. The ritual itself was a series of chants and movements performed by the temple's priests. The air vibrated with energy, the walls echoing with a sound that seemed almost alive. Leora watched Elias closely. While others might be intimidated by the unfamiliar and sacred atmosphere, he stood with calm focus, absorbing every detail. When the ceremony ended, Leora spoke softly. "You see, humans rarely experience traditions like these. They are intense, immersive, and binding. Many visitors would feel lost or uncomfortable." Elias nodded. "I feel a kind of connection, though. I can sense the pride and dedication of your people. There is power in these rituals, not just in history, but in the way they shape hearts and minds." A small smile crossed Leora's face. His words were insightful, but more importantly, they revealed an openness that most of her people lacked. He did not judge. He did not dismiss. He observed, respected, and adapted. The next part of the festival took them to the open plazas, where dancers moved with elegant precision, and musicians played instruments that produced sound unlike anything Elias had heard. The crowd cheered, clapped, and sang along, creating a vibrant, almost overwhelming atmosphere. Leora moved with ease among the citizens, introducing Elias to performers and artisans. She watched as he greeted everyone with polite curiosity, asking questions about their crafts, their instruments, and the meanings behind their art. The citizens, initially wary of the human stranger, began to relax as they sensed his genuine interest. One artisan, a young painter named Kira, approached and offered a small painting of the twin suns over the mountains. Elias accepted it graciously, his eyes lighting up. "This is beautiful," he said. "It captures more than just the view. It captures the feeling of this place." Leora felt a twinge of pride. Elias appreciated the depth of her world in ways few visitors ever had. And yet, she could not deny a rising sense of curiosity about this human. How did he see so clearly what others missed? As the day progressed, they moved to the ceremonial games. The Sci-Fi games were designed to test agility, strategy, and teamwork. Citizens competed in complex challenges, from obstacle courses to mental puzzles. Leora noticed that Elias watched each event with a keen eye, analyzing strategies, predicting outcomes, and asking questions about the reasoning behind each rule. "Humans play games too," he said quietly as they observed a team maneuver through a maze of floating platforms. "But they are usually simpler. I admire how your people combine intellect and skill." "And you," Leora said, "would you be able to participate?" Elias smiled faintly. "I would try, and perhaps learn something new in the process." At her subtle suggestion, he joined one of the games. Leora watched with surprise and admiration. He moved quickly, thinking ahead, adapting to unexpected changes, and even helping other participants when necessary. He did not dominate the game for glory. Instead, he focused on collaboration, making sure that everyone around him had a chance to succeed. Leora felt a warmth in her chest as she observed him. The human was not just intelligent or brave. He was compassionate, respectful, and capable of inspiring others. It was as if he brought out the best in everyone he touched. As the sun began to set, painting the city in shades of gold and violet, Leora and Elias walked to a quiet overlook above the festival grounds. The sounds of celebration drifted upward, but here, they were alone with the gentle hum of the wind and the distant light of the city. "You handled yourself well today," Leora said, watching him closely. "You could have been overwhelmed, most humans would have been." Elias chuckled softly. "Perhaps, but humans learn quickly when challenged, and I have an excellent teacher." His gaze met hers, steady and honest. "You flatter too easily," Leora replied, though her voice betrayed a hint of warmth. She turned to look at the city below. "I am not sure what to make of you. You are unlike anyone I have ever met, and yet I cannot deny that your presence is unsettling in a good way." "Unsettling?" Elias asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," she admitted. "You challenge my assumptions, my understanding of humans, and even my own expectations. I am not used to that." "Perhaps that is a gift," Elias said quietly. "Or perhaps it is a challenge. Either way, I hope it helps you see what is possible, not just what is expected." Leora turned her gaze back to the horizon. The twin suns were almost gone, leaving the sky deep purple, dotted with the first stars of evening. She felt a stirring inside her, a mixture of curiosity, respect, and a strange sense of admiration. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but Elias was more than that. He was extraordinary. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden commotion in the festival plaza below. A group of merchants argued heatedly over trade agreements, their voices rising in anger. Leora frowned. Disputes were not uncommon, but this one seemed unusually intense. Elias followed her gaze. "Do you wish to intervene?" he asked. "I should," Leora replied. "But I need to do it carefully. Tradition dictates that I act with authority but also with fairness." Together, they descended toward the plaza. Leora stepped forward, raising her hands to signal calm. The crowd gradually quieted, noticing her presence. Elias stayed by her side, observing and waiting for her cue. "Citizens of Sci-Fi," Leora began, her voice clear and commanding, "we honor each of you, and we respect the agreements that bind our community. But disputes must be resolved with fairness, not anger." Speak your concerns calmly and we will listen. Elias placed a supportive hand lightly on her shoulder. His presence, steady and reassuring, gave her courage. She continued, I ask that you remember our traditions and act in the spirit of respect. Only then can we preserve the harmony that our people have built for generations. The crowd gradually dispersed, the anger replaced with murmurs of understanding. Leora turned to Elias. Thank you for standing with me, she said quietly. Always, he replied simply. As they walked back toward the palace, Leora realized that she was learning something profound from Elias. Humans were not just strong or brave. They had a way of inspiring others, of seeing solutions where others saw only problems. And she could see that he was beginning to influence her thinking as well. Later, as they reached the palace gates, Leora paused. The stars shone brightly above, reflected in the polished floors of the courtyard. She looked at Elias and felt a mixture of curiosity and hope. Perhaps this human was not just a visitor from another world. Perhaps he was a key to understanding herself, her people, and the possibilities that lay beyond tradition. I think I understand why humans are feared in some circles, Leora admitted softly. You are unpredictable, yes, but also capable of so much more than we imagine. Elias smiled. Perhaps fear comes from not understanding, but courage comes from trying, learning, and believing in what is possible. I see that courage in you as well, Princess. For the first time, Leora felt a shift within herself. She was not just a princess bound by duty. She was a leader, a thinker, and someone capable of choice. And with Elias by her side, not as a master of her fate, but as an equal, she began to imagine a future that was not dictated solely by tradition. The night settled around the palace, but Leora's mind was alive with thoughts, questions, and possibilities. She realized that the cultural exchange had done more than teach Elias about her people. It had also shown her something about herself, that she could question, challenge, and choose. And perhaps, she thought as she gazed at the stars, that was the beginning of a new era, not only for her, but for the Sci-Fi Empire itself. The sun rose slowly over the Sci-Fi capital, painting the silver towers with golden light. Birds chirped softly in the palace gardens, and the hum of early morning activity filled the streets. But inside the palace walls, tension was rising like a storm on the horizon. Princess Leora walked through the corridors, her mind heavy with concern. The festival and cultural exchange had been a success, and Captain Elias had earned the respect of many citizens and officials. Yet she could feel the unease among the council members. They whispered in corners, their eyes darting toward the human envoy with suspicion and caution. Leora entered the council chamber, where elders and advisors were gathered. Their expressions were serious, voices low as they discussed matters of security and diplomacy. She could sense a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle but undeniable tension. Princess Leora, Elder Kale said, his voice calm but firm, we have received reports of a rogue faction planning to disrupt the peace treaty. They oppose the alliance with the human systems and may attempt to sabotage the upcoming diplomatic meetings. Leora frowned. How certain are these reports? Reliable, Kale replied. We have intercepted messages, and several informants confirm the threat. We must act quickly to protect our people and ensure the treaty proceeds as planned. Leora's mind raced. The rogue faction had been a concern for years, but she had hoped that diplomacy and preparation would keep them at bay. Now with Elias present and the treaty imminent, the danger felt immediate. I will need a full briefing, she said, her voice steady. And Captain Elias must be informed as well. His insight may prove invaluable. Kale nodded. Of course, Princess. We will assemble the intelligence immediately. By the time Elias arrived, Leora had already reviewed the reports with the council. The rogue faction was organized, well-equipped, and determined to prevent the alliance at any cost. They had spies in the city, saboteurs hidden among the workforce, and access to technology that could disrupt communications and transport. Elias studied the reports carefully, his expression thoughtful. "They are well prepared but not infallible," he said. "Their tactics rely on fear and confusion. If we remain calm, coordinate our efforts, and anticipate their moves, we can neutralize the threat before it escalates." Leora nodded. She admired his clarity of thought. While the council fretted and debated, Elias remained focused, analyzing the problem and devising solutions. It was a distinctly human approach, direct, practical, and effective. "Then we must act quickly," Leora said. "Prepare the palace defenses and alert the city watch. We cannot allow them to disrupt the treaty or harm our citizens." The council moved swiftly, and Leora and Elias were soon coordinating security measures. The palace gates were reinforced, patrols were increased, and surveillance systems were activated. Citizens were discreetly informed to remain vigilant, while the council worked to identify potential spies. Elias walked beside Leora through the bustling control chambers, his eyes scanning screens and maps. "Your people have strong defenses," he observed. "But even the best systems can be vulnerable without quick decision-making. That is where leadership matters." "You mean me?" Leora asked, a hint of challenge in her voice. He smiled faintly. "Yes, you. You have the authority, the knowledge, and the courage to guide your people. That combination is rare, Princess. Use it wisely." The warning alarm sounded suddenly, a low, vibrating tone that echoed through the palace. Leora's heart quickened. "What is it?" she demanded. "An intrusion," Elias said calmly, already moving toward the nearest control panel. "They are attempting to breach the outer perimeter." Leora followed him, her mind racing. Guards were mobilized, and the outer walls shimmered with protective energy fields. A group of rogue agents had approached under the cover of morning mist, aiming to infiltrate the palace unnoticed. Elias studied the display, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. "They are using cloaking devices, but their formation is predictable. If we block their approach and isolate them, we can neutralize the threat without harm to civilians." Leora nodded, her own confidence rising. She issued commands to the guards, directing them with precision. Elias coordinated with the palace systems, guiding the response with strategy and foresight. Together, they worked seamlessly, a combination of human ingenuity and Sci-Fi tradition. The rogue agents appeared in the outer courtyard, their cloaks flickering in and out of visibility. The guards moved swiftly, blocking their path and containing them. Leora and Elias watched closely, prepared to intervene if necessary. One agent activated a small device that emitted a pulse, attempting to disable the palace defenses. Elias reacted instantly, overriding the system and redirecting the energy field to neutralize the pulse. The agent froze, caught off guard. Leora seized the moment. She approached the intruder, her voice firm. "You will not harm my people. Leave now or face the consequences." The agent hesitated, then deactivated the device and retreated under the watchful eyes of the palace guards. The rest of the rogue group followed, their plan thwarted without bloodshed. Elias turned to Leora, his expression calm but approving. "Well done. You remained focused, decisive, and compassionate. That is leadership in action." Leora felt a surge of pride but also relief. The threat had been real, but together they had prevented disaster. "Your strategy was remarkable," she admitted. "I would not have managed it alone." "You would have," he replied gently. "Humans can guide, but we also learn from those who lead with wisdom and courage. That is why I stand with you." The council entered the control chamber, their expressions a mix of admiration and cautious respect. "Princess Leora, Captain Elias," Elder Kale said, "your combined efforts have prevented a serious crisis. The palace and the city are secure." Leora nodded, though her mind was already considering the next steps. The rogue faction would not give up so easily. She needed to prepare not only for defense, but also for negotiation, diplomacy, and intelligence gathering. Elias, she said, turning to him, we must anticipate their next move. They may attempt to disrupt the treaty directly or attack citizens to sow fear. We cannot allow either. I agree, he replied. We should consider proactive measures, secure communications, protect key individuals, and maintain visible presence among the population. Fear thrives in shadows. Visibility and preparedness will keep it at bay. They spent the next hours coordinating with the palace advisors, city officials, and security teams. Leora issued commands with confidence, her voice steady, her decisions clear. Elias offered guidance, pointing out potential vulnerabilities and suggesting tactical adjustments. Together, they built a defense that was both strong and adaptable, a combination of Sci-Fi discipline and human ingenuity. As night fell, the city remained calm, unaware of how close it had come to chaos. Leora and Elias stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the streets below. The twin moons reflected in the silver towers, casting a serene light across the city. You handled today remarkably, Elias said quietly. Your people would follow you anywhere with confidence. And you, Leora replied, her voice soft, have proven that humans are not just bold but capable of wisdom and strategy. I underestimated your kind. He smiled faintly. Perhaps we both underestimated each other. That is part of learning, Princess. Understanding requires seeing beyond assumptions. Leora turned to him, a thoughtful expression on her face. You have changed my perspective on humans, and perhaps on what leadership truly means. Elia's gaze met hers, steady and sincere. Leadership is not about fear, tradition, or power alone. It is about responsibility, courage, and the ability to act with both wisdom and heart. You embody those qualities. For a moment, silence fell between them, broken only by the soft hum of the palace and the distant sound of the city at night. Leora felt a mixture of awe, respect, and curiosity. This human had proven himself not just in words, but in action. And she realized that the lessons he brought were not only for her people, but for herself. She could feel the weight of her responsibilities, yes, but also a new sense of confidence. She was no longer simply a princess bound by duty. She was a leader capable of decisive action, and with Elia's insight, she felt prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Yet the night also brought a sense of caution. The rogue faction had shown their willingness to disrupt the peace. Their motives were unclear, but their intent was dangerous. Leora knew that this was only the beginning. The coming days would test not only her skills, but the resilience of her people, the alliance with humans, and the strength of trust she was building with Elias. As they walked back into the palace, Leora reflected on the events of the day. She had seen courage, strategy, and wisdom in action, not just from her own people, but from a human who had arrived as an outsider. Elias had shown her that differences could be a strength, that cooperation could overcome fear, and that even the most rigid traditions could benefit from fresh perspective. And in that realization, Leora felt a spark of hope. The rogue faction could not undo the alliance, nor could they shake the determination of her people. With vigilance, courage, and the partnership she was forming with Elias, the empire could face any threat. The night was quiet now, but Leora knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges. The rogue faction would not rest, and the treaty would require careful attention. But for the first time she felt ready, not just to survive, but to lead, to inspire, and to embrace the unexpected possibilities that the future held. Elias walked beside her, calm and reassuring, as the palace doors closed behind them. And Leora knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. An unlikely alliance of human ingenuity and Sci-Fi strength, united in purpose and vision. The night sky over the Sci-Fi capital was filled with stars that shimmered like diamonds against the velvet darkness. The twin moons hung low, casting silver light across the palace and gardens. Yet beneath the serene surface, tension buzzed like an unseen current. Princess Leora paced the corridors, her mind racing. The rogue faction had not given up. Their earlier attempt to disrupt the peace treaty had been foiled, but intelligence reports confirmed that they were planning a more direct strike, targeting the upcoming formal meeting between Sci-Fi leaders and the human delegation. Leora felt a mix of determination and anxiety. She had faced challenges before, but this time, the stakes were higher, not just for the Empire but for the fragile trust being built between her people and the humans. Captain Elias had agreed to stand by her side, offering both counsel and action, but she knew that even together, the coming confrontation would test every skill, every decision they had made. Elias met her in the palace control chamber, his expression calm yet alert. "We've mapped potential entry points for the rogue faction," he said. "If they attempt another attack, we must anticipate their strategy. They will aim for speed, surprise, and disruption." Leora nodded. "Then we must counter with preparation, coordination, and courage. We cannot allow fear to dictate our actions." Together, they finalized security plans, coordinating the palace guards, city watch, and advanced monitoring systems. Leora took a moment to address the council, her voice steady and commanding. "The rogue faction believes they can destabilize our alliance. They underestimate the strength, intelligence, and unity of our people. We will meet this threat together, with strategy, courage, and resolve." The council members bowed, inspired by her confidence. Even the most skeptical advisors felt renewed faith in their princess. As preparations continued, Leora and Elias took a moment to walk through the palace gardens. The soft scent of silver roses filled the air, and the gentle rustle of leaves was a comforting contrast to the tension within the walls. "You have changed the way I see humans," Leora said quietly, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Your calm, your intelligence, your courage. It is more than I ever imagined." Elias looked at her with sincerity. "And you, princess, have shown me the strength and wisdom of your people. You are brave, thoughtful, and capable of leading not just by duty, but by example." I would not stand with anyone else. For a moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. There was only trust, respect, and the quiet acknowledgement of partnership. Leora realized that she had been frozen in her assumptions, her expectations, and her fears. Elias' presence had begun to thaw that stillness. Their moment was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Red lights flashed across the control panels, and the familiar hum of the palace security systems grew louder. Leora's heart raced. "They are here," she said. The rogue faction had launched a coordinated attack, attempting to breach the main palace gates and disrupt the meeting. Cloaked in stealth technology, they moved swiftly, aiming to overwhelm defenses before the humans or council members could react. "Follow me," Elias said calmly, already heading toward the control interface. "We need to isolate their forces and neutralize the threat without harming innocent civilians." Leora and Elias worked together seamlessly. She issued commands to the palace guards, coordinating patrols and strategic blockades. He monitored the rogue agents' movements, predicting their tactics and guiding the defense. The combination of human ingenuity and Sci-Fi discipline proved formidable. The first wave of intruders appeared near the outer gates. Guards intercepted them, using energy nets and containment fields to prevent them from advancing. The rogues attempted to counter with small pulse devices designed to disable the palace's energy shields. Elias reacted instantly, rerouting power and countering the pulses. Leora gave precise orders to reposition guards, ensuring no civilian or official would be harmed. The confrontation moved swiftly. Rogue agents tried to infiltrate from multiple directions, but each attempt was anticipated and blocked. Leora's confidence grew with each success. She saw the value of strategy, preparation, and trust, both in her people and in the humans standing beside her. One of the rogue leaders attempted a bold move, trying to enter the council chambers directly. Leora acted without hesitation. She moved through the halls with speed and precision, flanked by elite palace guards. Elias was at her side, coordinating from the control panels and offering real-time updates. They confronted the rogue leader at the council doors. The intruder's device pulsed, attempting to disable the chamber's energy barriers. Elias intervened, redirecting the energy and neutralizing the device. Leora faced the intruder directly, her voice firm and commanding. "You will not harm my people or disrupt the peace," she said. "Leave now or face consequences you cannot overcome." The rogue froze, realizing the determination in her eyes and the strength of the defenses around them. Slowly, the intruder deactivated the device and retreated. The remaining rogue agents, seeing their leader defeated, fled in disarray. The palace fell silent. The threat had been neutralized without bloodshed, thanks to the combined courage, intelligence, and quick thinking of Leora, Elias, and the palace forces. Breathing heavily, Leora turned to Elias. "We did it," she said, relief mixing with exhilaration. "Together." He nodded, a small smile on his face. "You led brilliantly, I merely assisted. Your people trust you because you inspire them, princess, and you trusted me. That is what made the difference." Leora felt a warmth in her chest. She realized that fear could not guide her decisions and that courage, true courage, was not just about facing danger, but about trust, collaboration, and wisdom. Later, as the city celebrated the thwarting of the attack, Leora and Elias stood on the palace balcony, looking at the streets below. Citizens cheered, lighting lanterns and celebrating the safety of their city. Music and laughter filled the air, carrying a sense of relief and joy. "You were right," Leora said quietly. "Humans are extraordinary, not just in strength or courage, but in the way you inspire others, solve problems, and bring hope." "And you were right," Elias replied. "Sci-Fi are disciplined, wise, and brave. Your leadership today saved your people. You balanced tradition with innovation, courage with strategy, and duty with compassion." They stood together, watching the lights of the city flicker and dance. For a moment, the events of the day seemed distant, replaced by a sense of possibility and shared triumph. The following morning, the formal meeting with the human delegation proceeded as planned. Leora and Elias attended together, their partnership clear to all in attendance. The council observed, impressed by the coordination and trust between the princess and the human envoy. When the discussion of alliances and trade agreements began, Leora spoke with clarity and confidence. She outlined the terms of cooperation, addressed concerns, and proposed solutions to potential conflicts. Elias supported her with insights from human strategy and diplomacy, offering ideas that bridged cultural gaps and strengthened the treaty. The meeting concluded successfully, with both sides expressing satisfaction and optimism. The alliance was secured, stronger than ever before. Leora realized that the success was not just in negotiations, but in the combination of her people's wisdom and the humans' ingenuity. Later, alone in the palace gardens, Leora reflected on the events of the past days. The rogue faction had tested her courage. The humans had challenged her assumptions, and through it all, she had discovered a strength she had not fully recognized within herself. Elias approached, holding a small, simple gift, a crystal carved in the shape of the twin moons. "For you, princess," he said, "a reminder that even in darkness, light can guide the way." Leora accepted it, touched by the gesture. "Thank you, Elias," she said softly. "You have changed my understanding of humans, leadership, and myself," he smiled. "And you have shown me that courage and wisdom can exist in every world. I am honored to stand with you." For the first time, Leora felt completely free, not free from duty, but free in her choice. She could follow tradition, yes, but she could also shape it, improve it, and guide her people toward a better future. And she could choose her own path, with a partner she respected, trusted, and admired. As she looked at Elias, Leora felt a moment of stillness. She realized she had been frozen before, frozen by expectations, tradition, and fear. But now she was free to act, to choose, and to embrace possibilities she had never imagined. "Elias," she said, her voice steady, "I once thought this arranged meeting was a prison. Now I see it as a beginning, not just for me but for our peoples and perhaps for a future we can build together." He reached for her hand, offering support without dominance. "Together," he agreed simply. And in that moment, standing under the twin moons, Princess Leora and Captain Elias looked toward a future filled with hope, courage, and partnership. Humanity had shown its brilliance, not just through strength, but through wisdom, ingenuity, and heart. And the Sci-Fi Empire had witnessed that power firsthand. The rogue faction had been defeated. The treaty had been secured. And for the first time in her life, Leora felt truly alive, ready to lead, ready to inspire, and ready to embrace the unexpected wonders that the universe and humans could bring. The stars above shone brighter than ever, as if celebrating the triumph of courage, collaboration, and the endless possibilities of choice. And Princess Leora, once frozen by duty and fear, now stood free, confident, and prepared to face whatever came next, side by side with the human who had changed her world.